In today's American English pronunciation lesson, you're going to learn one of the biggest, most important details to master not only the stress in English, but the rhythm as well. Hi, I'm Josh, your American English guide, and this is English Hacks Pronunciation, where I help you to sound like a native if you want, and to understand real natural speech better. A lot of people focus on the stress with the stressed syllables being louder, longer, usually higher in pitch. We've talked about that in previous lessons. But we also know that the unstressed syllables are supposed to be shorter, quieter, and usually lower in pitch. But here's the problem. Especially if you come from a syllable timed language, English is a stress timed language, the big mistake that many English learners make is that they will make the stress syllables louder, longer, and usually higher in pitch, but they don't make the unstressed syllables shorter, quieter, and lower in pitch. And you might think that you're doing this, but you might not be. So what do I mean? What's going on here? Think of this in 3 levels. Let's say that we have a stressed syllable, which is loud and long. Okay, great. Then let's say we have an unstressed syllable, which is short and quiet. Also great. Now, as I said, especially if you come from a syllable-timed language, because what do syllable-timed languages do? Well, the length of all the syllables is about the same. And then when you need to add stress, you'll add stress, but you don't really change the length very much. So you come to American English, you make sure that those stress syllables are louder and longer. You do a good job with that. But you don't actually change the length of the unstressed syllables. You're sort of in this in-between point. Instead of actually making them shorter and quieter, you're keeping them sort of in between short and quiet and loud and long. This one simple little detail actually can make a huge difference, not only in how natural you sound and even how understandable you are, but it can make speaking so much easier. As we'll talk about in the next lesson, this is going to lead into a concept called eating vowels. Just hold on to that for now. We'll get there next time. But for now, let's just look at an example and see the difference between keeping an unstressed syllable kind of in the middle and making an unstressed syllable actually shorter and quieter, because the contrast is what's important. Let's first look at the example, I want to go to the beach. We've seen this many times on this channel, so we'll start there. And we know, okay, I is not stressed, wa is stressed, na is not, go is stressed, to, the, these are not stressed, they're usually reduced to the, and then beach is stressed. Okay, so we know our stress pattern. Now, what we want to hear is that want, go, and beach are louder and longer, right? Okay, that's usually not a problem once you kind of get the hang of that in American English. So want, go, beach. Okay, I'm going to take those unstressed syllables, the I, the na, the t, and the, and first I'm going to make them kind of in that middle range where they're not actually shorter and quieter, they're just sort of eh. I wanna go to the beach. I wanna go to the beach. We can kind of hear that, okay, yeah, the want, the go, the beach, they're louder, they stand out a bit, but they don't stand out as much, right? It's a little hard to kind of hear them stand out. Now, what if I do this instead? I wanna go to the beach. I wanna go to the beach. Now, it's a subtle difference. It's a small, little, hard to notice difference. What am I doing there? So I'm saying I, go straight from that I to the W. I Okay, super short and quiet on that I. I wanna, not I wanna. See, it's a little flat. I wanna, go, wanna go. See, we can hear that. Wanna go. It's like two little hills. And then to the, so the T in two turns into a flap D. I've talked about that before. We don't care right now. Go to the. So we hear da the. Those need to stay super short and quiet because they're both unstressed. So it's like da 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 da. Go to the. Okay, louder, longer, shorter, quieter. That creates sort of a little valley, and then beach comes back up. Visualize it like this. The way you might be speaking is something like this. And how you want to speak is more like this. Because it's that contrast in a stress-timed language. That's why it's called stress timing. The length cannot be the same. The length cannot be similar. The length has to be very different. You need to make a bigger difference in the length. Just because you don't make the unstressed syllables louder, right? You're just keeping them low. You can't just make the stressed syllables louder. You have to make the stressed syllables louder and longer compared to what you might be used to. And you have to make the unstressed syllables shorter and quieter compared to what you're used to. So you need to take, if you come from a syllable time language, you need to take where you are here and do this. So you're always going more like this. Now you can overdo this. If you say, I wanna go to the beach, there may be a use for that. Like if you're really emphasizing and you're kind of frustrated because the person won't listen to you.
I wanna go to the beach.
Okay, we might do something like that in special cases, but we don't do it that much in normal speech. So there is a balance to it. Let's look at another example. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. So what do we notice here? I'm not saying he doesn't like it. That's really flat. Okay. I'm not saying he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. Okay, I'm trying to keep those unstressed syllables kind of middle, where they're not actually shorter and quieter. And then the last step, more natural speech, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. Okay, that he is super short. It's not he, no, it's he. That's it. Does. Oh, explodes out. He doesn't. Of course, there's two syllables, doesn't. He doesn't. Like. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like. Dun. It. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. But there's one more important detail that I want to introduce you to, and that has to do with the idea of the syllable arc. That's what I call it anyway. Now the syllable arc, which is going to be very important again in that next lesson about eating vowels, the syllable arc applies to all syllables, whether stressed or unstressed. And I want you to imagine that there is a little arc above every single syllable. Okay? What is this arc? What am I talking about? If I say the word cat, it's not that we say cat. See, it's kind of like, it's just flat all the way across. No, there's cat. Okay. As we go through a syllable, in this case it's a one syllable word, so it's the whole word. But as we go through a syllable, we actually start slightly lower, we raise up, and then we fall slightly at the end of that syllable. Okay? Now this usually isn't noticeable in the flow of normal speech, but it's there, and it's very important to understand so that your rhythm can flow well, so that you can do reductions and things like that really well also. And this goes directly with what we were talking about with that contrast. What's the difference between a stressed syllable arc and an unstressed syllable arc? Imagine, remember, the stressed syllables are louder, right? More volume, and they're longer. So what do you think happens to the arc? It gets stretched out, right? It goes up more, and it lasts longer. Cat, cat, cat. Now let's use a two-syllable word here so we can really hear this contrast. How about the word color? The first syllable is stressed, ka. Second syllable is not, lur. Now there's still an arc in that second syllable, but just like for a stressed syllable where it's louder and longer, that arc goes up more and it comes out longer. The unstressed syllable is also going to have an arc, but it's going to be shorter, so it's going to be more condensed, and it's going to be quieter, so it's not going to come up as much. So it's going to be proportional. Okay, it's going to look the same. It's still an arc. You could flip it upside down if you want color. So keep that arc idea in mind as we go through the remaining examples. Have you read the book? 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 Okay. Now here for questions, there's a couple things I want to mention. Number one, especially in a question, in that first word, even if it's not stressed, it can kind of sound stressed because it's coming out of nothing, right? There's nothing before it. So compared to that, it sounds sort of like it's stressed. And you can even sort of fall into the next one. Have you, have you, have you, okay? We'll actually kind of combine that arc almost with the two unstressed syllables. Have you, okay? This is a trick. If we go back to I want to go to the beach, it's a little harder to notice because we have t and the way they're physically created. They kind of sound like they're bumping a little bit more, but go to the, go to the, go to the. So that's another way to look at it, and you can sort of blend those arcs for two unstressed syllables together. You can't do that with two stressed syllables together. Also note on yes or no questions, we have that rising intonation at the end, regardless of if that last syllable is stressed or not. That lets us know it's a yes or no question. So you do have to go up in a special way there. We're not going to worry about that in this lesson here. That's more intonation. Now, there's one more example I want to talk about, because what happens if you have a word where it's three syllables, but there's only one stress? Remember, some three-syllable words will have one stress, like tomorrow, tomorrow. Okay. Some three-syllable words will have two stresses, like understand, understand, understand. The primary stress or the main stress is on that last syllable, but the un is also stressed in that word. And then some three-syllable words will only have one stress, but instead of being in the middle there, it might actually be at the beginning, and you'll have a falling pattern. Okay, as some people call it a staircase. So like the word interesting, interesting. How does the arc work there? Exactly the same. Interesting. Imagine it like a ball that's bouncing downstairs, but each time it gets smaller. Okay, because it has to keep getting shorter and quieter, shorter and quieter. Interesting. 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 Okay. Now let's put that in a sentence. It's the most interesting thing. It's the most, so it's in the, it's the, right? Or you can look at it as it's the, they both work. It's the most, starts to come up, it's the stress word. It's the most interesting. Now here we have an interesting dynamic, because we know in interesting we're going to drop, which means shorter, quieter, and more, even shorter and quieter, right? But we're going from most to interesting, and in has more stress than most because that's the focus word for the sentence. It's the most interesting thing. So because of that, we're actually going to go up and down. This actually sort of becomes one big arc, okay? The most interesting. It's the most interesting thing. Of course, thing is stressed, but then it's going to fall at the end because it's a regular statement. It's intonation. So it's going to pull it down at the end of that last arc. So if you start thinking about English stress and English rhythm as a series of arcs, and you want to take the basic arc, okay, just a normal arc shape. If it's louder and longer, you blow everything up. If it's shorter and quieter, you shrink everything down. But you need to make sure that there's a big enough difference between this, and don't stay around here. That's the idea. Does this idea help you visualize how English rhythm and stress should work, or does it make things more confusing? Don't miss the next lesson where we talk about eating vowels and take this idea to the next level. Thank you guys so much for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I'll see you in the next one. You are going to learn what? What?